Okay, hi everyone. I think we are right at the top of the hour. And so we'll go ahead and get started. Matt, if you want to share your screen now. So welcome everybody to the Fire Lab seminar series. This is the second to the last seminar of the fall series. Today we have a couple of presenters. We have Matt Carroll. He's an organizational learning ambassador with the USDA Forest Service Rocky Mountain Research Station's Office of Innovation and Organizational Learning. He's been embedded with the Forest Service's Work Environment and Performance Office to embed forward-looking learning philosophies and practices into the anti-harassment program. Matt was a part of the team that developed the coordinated response protocol or the learning review process, and he has participated as a subject matter expert facilitator or team lead in many of the learning reviews since the process was officially adopted. Matt has an associate's degree from Paul Smith College in environmental technology, a bachelor's of arts in human ecology from the College of the Atlantic, and a master's of forestry from the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. Co-presenting with Matt today is Rachel Reimer. Rachel is CEO and lead researcher at Lotus Mountain Consulting. They pioneered a feminist, appreciative approach to action research as a tool to understand and transform traditionally male-dominated workplace cultures. Her operational experiences include crew leading and falling on an initial attack crew for the British Columbia Wildfire Service, conflict zone humanitarian aid, work with a focus on women's leadership and community-based development, and avalanche and guiding work. Rachel holds an MA in leadership studies and a PhD, and she's also a PhD candidate at the University of Wollongong. And I think with that, Matt, I'm gonna hand it over to you. It's all yours.
Thank you so much, and I apologize for there's a dog barking in the background. It happens at our house. Hello again. Thank you for that introduction, and it's a pleasure being here. I'm really excited for the discussion that we're going to hopefully have for this. I'll start by introducing the team again. My name is Matthew Carroll. My pronouns are he, him, and I live and work in Bar Harbor, Maine, which is the ancestral lands of the Penobscot and Passamaquoddy people. I came to this job from a predominantly fire background and a physical safety background, and have been working to share that learning in other areas, beyond just the strictly physical safety world. And this project has been just a central focus of that work, and I'm really excited about where we're going. I'm co-leading this project with Rachel, and I'll allow her to introduce herself.
Thanks, Matt. My name is Rachel, and my pronouns are she, they, and I'm coming to you from the Sinixt and Secwepemc and Tunaha lands in Revelstoke, British Columbia. And my background is in operational fire and research on women's leadership. I came into the conversation on inclusion issues from a gender perspective, but my work is intersectional, and I work with government, industry associations, and organizations on culture change. And I use social science research as a tool to understand the unintended negative impacts of workplace culture on people who are gender minorities or hold other identities that are traditionally have been targets for harassment and discrimination. And the industries I tend to work in are really complex, dynamic, risk-based environments like wildfire, avalanche, and guiding industry, where consequences of team decision-making are high and can result in fatalities. And there's also kind of an element of physical strength and needing to prove oneself that introduces increased barriers for folks who are other than cis white males who tend to dominate those types of professions. So that's my background. Matt, are we passing this along to the rest of the team as well?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Jody, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right, hello. I'm Jody John. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm coming to you from the Arapaho, Ute, and Cheyenne tribal area here at University of Colorado Boulder. I'm an associate professor here at CU, and my research focuses on team processes and organizational learning about risks and hazards. My background that informs my research is that I spent 8 years as a wildland firefighter with the Forest Service, mostly in Region 4. And I've also done some labor contract work down in Antarctica for the U.S. Antarctic Program. So all of that experience got me really interested in processes of organizational learning about risk. And I've worked on a couple of learning reviews, the Dolan Fire, pardon me, learning review, as well as a recent route fire RLS.
Ruth, do you want to go next?
Sure, thank you. My name is Ruth Hickerson. I'm also from the University of Colorado. My pronouns are she, her, and I want to acknowledge that CU Boulder is built on the traditional territories of the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Ute nations. Prior to coming to work in academia, I worked for many years in human resources, doing organizational assessment training and development. Here at the University of Colorado, I'm specialized in teaching relational communication courses with a focus on language and social interaction and gender and communication. Thank you.
Now we're going to swing back to the Forest Service. Kim, do you want to go next? You're on mute. Take two.
Hi, I'm Kim Peters. I'm with the Work Environment Performance Office. I just took a new position as the National Program Manager for the Federal Employee Viewpoint Survey. And most recently was the branch chief for training and employee development, which runs our leadership development and supervisor training programs. I'm located in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and New Mexico is currently the home of 23 recognized tribes, including Pueblo, Navajo or Dene, and Apache and Zuni, and also the ancestral home of all of those, as well as Tiwa and probably some that I am missing. So glad to join you today and looking forward to our session.
And the last team member we have here, just back from a detail and back onto the team, Rebecca Rash. Go ahead.
Thanks, Matt. Happy to be here. I think I presented to this group maybe 5 years ago when I just started with the Forest Service, so fun to come back around. I'm coming to you from Seattle, Washington, which I think is the homeland from where I'm looking on this map of the Coast Salish. So my role now back with the Work Environment Performance Office is Data Program Manager, and I'm helping the group with the manager perspectives and some of the learnings that we've done looking at our anti-harassment program. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much. And we had one of our team members wasn't able to make it. Sarah McCaffrey is also working with us. And I hope you'll share in my enthusiasm in just how the reason I'm so excited is we have such an amazing group of people gathered for this team, such a depth of experience, such a broad reach of experience. That to me is that's a win in and of itself, and where we're going next, I think, is I hope you'll see why I'm so excited about it. So, what are we doing? We are taking a deep dive into culture in the hopes of transforming culture around harassment and discrimination. So the first question, obviously, is why? Why do we want to do this? It's difficult work. It's difficult to get people to talk about this. It's complicated and complex, and it's way harder to talk about the hazards that exist here than it is talking about you know, the hazard zone, a fire line, rocks and trees and fire and stuff. But the reason we're doing is because we've found on a number of cases, that I'm familiar with, and probably many more that I'm not familiar with, that the culture and the effect of that culture on the relationships in crews has a direct relationship to firefighter safety. So we're not doing this to rid the agency of harassment, discrimination, so that it's a nice place and that everyone is hanging out in under rainbows and all that sort of stuff. We're doing it because it is directly related to safety. And by the way, the other benefits also include that, you know, it's going to be a higher performing workforce, hopefully, as we begin to address this. So that's one part. It's linked to firefighter safety. The other bit is that we're not the first people to make this connection. We're not the first people to recognize that we have an issue with the culture as it relates to inclusion, equity, around gender and other intersections. So that's the why. Our purpose statement and sort of what we always go back to as a team, as we develop methodologies and as we develop kind of have to make those tough decisions about, are we going to chase this or go this way or that way, is this. And a couple of the key points in here, it's a very concise statement, so they're all kind of key points, but the ones that stand out to me are everyday lived experiences. So we want to understand beyond those cases that raise to the level of harassment and discrimination. We want to focus in and look deeper than that into those everyday lived work experiences of the people who are doing all kinds of work in the wildland fire environment. So yeah, this is why we're doing it, and this is our central purpose. Another question that does come up is why the wildland fire environment? A couple of reasons for that. One is because we're pretty easily able to draw that line between the culture of harassment and discrimination and the interaction of team members to physical safety, to safety outcomes. So that was really easy. And the other one we found through some of Rebecca's work is that there are lots of hazards, work environment hazards that exist in the field and fire environment. So the combination of those two things, we're not pointing out fire as a bad actor in amongst the Forest Service. We're pointing to wildland fire as a focal point so that we can utilize them as an agent of change and to take a lead on this. So that's kind of a little bit on why we're choosing wildland fire. The last part of this, and I think this is important as we have this discussion with this academic group, is we're doing this to transform organizational and cultural norms towards an inclusive, high-performing workplace. This statement doesn't end with, we're doing this to make sure that we build and are able to move theory forward or build a bulletproof data set. We're doing it with the primary eye is on helping our organization change. Now, are we actually stacking the team with lots of scientists and trying to adhere to rigorous scientific methods? And absolutely, but our primary focus is on working towards helping our agency move forward. I'm going to have Rachel take over from here as now we're stepping out of my wheelhouse and into the real thinker. So go ahead, Rachel.
Thanks, Matt, for that introduction. If folks have questions, you could either raise your hand or I've got their comment the chat open here. So if you do have questions, you can throw them in there. So this project utilizes action research, which is a collaborative approach to problem solving. And so as Matt alluded to, the primary output of this project is not theory, it's actually organizational culture change, although action research is also useful for rich theorizing around organizational culture and interactions that happen in those cultures. And so our team that we've brought together has been based on folks who have deep perspectives and bring an intersectional approach. Some come from hazards and safety, others from gender communication, as we all introduced ourselves. And we are using a tool called Thought Exchange. And as a data collection tool, it has been used successfully in the BC Wildfire Service. And I put a link in the chat to a study that was published that I was lead on in, we gathered data in the fire season of 2016 in the BC Wildfire Service. And Thought Exchange in that study was very useful in facilitating a virtual conversation that's anonymous about kind of taboo or stigmatized subjects. So in the 2016 study, I inquired into the interactions between gender and leadership and how or if gender made a difference in how people were treated at work and how leaders were perceived. So Thought Exchange is a tool. We'll get a chance to experience this here in a moment, so you will see it firsthand. It enables folks to share thoughts in response to a question, and it uses an algorithm to ensure that every thought is seen and ranked an equal number of times. So participants share their thoughts, then they also view right away the thoughts that others have shared and star them or rank them according to whether the thought resonates with them. And so this creates kind of two data sets. One is we can theme the thoughts, on the back end when we do our analysis and provide kind of a frequency-based coding as you would with a traditional survey in qualitative research, and also creates a participants ranked data set of the most frequently starred thoughts. So this helps us understand how culture functions in real time, how folks who participate are interpreting their peers' perspectives, what resonates, what doesn't. And we can also collect demographic data to help us refine our analysis. And with this specific project, we're going to be doing thought exchanges through next fire season. And each thought exchange is focused on one question. And so we'll be sharing multiple questions throughout the season. And our goal is to turn around an infographic that shares our analysis, our team's analysis, within 2 weeks of the exchange itself. So this is a real democratization of information and knowledge, as opposed to traditional surveys where folks answer questions. It's a one-way exchange of information, and then that information is analyzed, and the turnaround time is typically quite long. So what this tool has been successful in doing in the British Columbia Wildfire Service it really helped folks perceive and recognize the impacts of gender discrimination on their peers. And that study in 2016 provided a significant catalyst for culture change in that organization. And the second link I've put in the chat is a study that Royal Roads University did on the 2016 wildfire study, assessing the effectiveness at creating culture change using action research and this tool. So feel free to read those in your own time if need be. But this is kind of our approach. And within the umbrella of action research, we're specifically taking a feminist appreciative approach to action research. So a feminist approach helps us be conscious of power dynamics in the group. And then an appreciative approach helps us inquire about participants' ideal future that they want to see in the culture, and then action steps that they'd recommend to meet their ideal future. So it's combining a critical approach with a strengths-based approach to look at how we can build on the best of what is, rather than just focusing on criticizing the current culture from a more critical theory perspective. So this has been something that I've worked with on teams and in organizations with similar demographics to the Forest Service Fire and Aviation program. And we've piloted it a couple times in a few different groups in the last couple months. And we're really excited to see how this is landing in the Forest Service. Matt, I think you can go to the next slide.
Got it. Should be coming. There it is. Took a while.
Perfect. So we've crafted our question progression through next fire season to build on itself. So to gain momentum and to help us achieve our goals, which is to understand the lived experiences folks are having and to ultimately be able to provide some guidance for how organizational culture change could look in a way that would reduce unintended negative outcomes for folks. So the first question will inquire into lived experiences. Second, we'll ask a question that helps us understand diverse perspectives on diversity initiatives. We want to invite some dialogue about unintended outcomes and really understand where the resistance is in the culture to change. We know there are folks who perceive diversity initiatives as a negative thing. We want to understand why and get curious and create a safe space for folks to share about their experiences. Third, inquire about barriers to changing culture. So what are things that folks can identify that is preventing culture change in their opinion? And that may look like things like policies, that may look like practices, it could look like, behaviors from their peers. So we're really hoping that we get a broad set of feedback on that. Fourth, inspire the imaginations of what an ideal future might look like. And we are hoping that this will come to us in participants' own words so that we can understand from the inside what matters most. Where are the common rallying points? Where are the common affinities that folks are sharing, that are their aspirations, that will make their experience of work meaningful, and that will be motivating enough for them to be willing to do some work of culture change in order to arrive there. And then finally, asking openly about what action steps will get us to that ideal future. So the outcome here, as you can see from this flow of questions, we'll get some really good information around experiences, including harassment and discrimination type experiences. We'll understand how current diversity and accountability initiatives are landing with folks. We'll understand why culture change has been so difficult and be able to identify some key barriers and resistance. And then some common rallying points, and finally, participant recommended action steps to get us to that ideal future. I see a question from Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Great to see you too. How is this landing in the Forest Service so far? It is landing really well. We've seen a lot of excitement about the thought exchange tool generally. I think there's been some survey fatigue, and some of that survey fatigue comes from just not seeing the point, not seeing where the data is going, not seeing it impacting real life. And so when we've been able to do these exchanges in our pilot groups so far, we've seen some really exciting feedback that's been really useful for us to help understand what we're engaging with. And then also folks are giving us really positive feedback about the tool and the experience of using the tool. So it seems to be landing really well. Next slide there, Matt.
I think this is the point. The next slide is just looking into our timeline. I think this is when we will actually do a thought exchange. I wanted to open up just for a second if there was a question or two about what we had, or if anyone from the team wanted to add a thing. add anything, and then I'll pull over and then pull the other screen to this screen, and then we can start that thought exchange.
Sure, Matt. While you're pulling that over, maybe I can just speak to how this fits in terms of qualitative research and our goals for what types of information this will provide us with. And folks, feel free to add questions in the chat. So this is a qualitative tool that provides, long answers as well as a ranking of those answers. So combined with the demographic questions that we ask, we can do a few different types of analysis, but primarily these issues are affecting a minority of the workforce. So achieving a statistically relevant number of participants may not be realistic, but our goal is to reach folks who not only have lived experience of harassment and discrimination, but also reach folks who feel that current diversity initiatives are alienating them, not serving them. And the way that we're aiming to do that is to present this as a tool for giving feedback on culture change. So what I found is in populations that are resistant to participating in research on culture, gender, harassment, and discrimination, when it's positioned as an opportunity to give feedback into action steps the organization will be taking to change culture, then folks tend to lean in a little bit more. And I've been successful in getting, kind of the cis white males who may traditionally opt out of, data collection methods like this because they feel like it's not about them or it doesn't pertain to them. So our goal is to get as a diverse set of perspectives as possible. The way we're going to do that is by positioning it as an opportunity to give feedback on culture change. But we acknowledge that because harassment and discrimination issues do affect a minority of the workforce, that it's not likely we're going to get a statistically relevant sample size out of this. And that's okay. So certainly acknowledging that talking about issues like harassment and discrimination are difficult to do in a workplace setting, and then also wanting to build on the deep sharing that qualitative tools provide. So with that, now we'll get an opportunity to actually experience the thought exchange. And for this group today, the question that our team has is shown on the screen there. And I'll actually let Matt take it from here and facilitate the exchange.
Sure. So as you can see, there is a QR code box. And I put a link in the chat. So go ahead and follow the link, or better yet, take your phone out and do that QR code thing, take a picture of it, and it'll take you to a site, or you can type in tejoin.com and use code 705022698. Those are all the different ways you can join. And what it'll ask you is go through a couple of questions, a couple of demographic questions, and then we will you'll have a chance to answer the question and then write some thoughts. The one thing I do want to say is this is not VRBO. It's not Uber. So if you give something 1 star or 2 stars, no one's going to get fired or lose their VRBO status. So again, what those ratings are all about is how does this thought resonate with you? As you read other thoughts, how does it resonate with you? It is not you're not trashing on anyone, or no one's going to lose their job. So please feel free to use the entire 1 through 5 star ratings. That helps distinguish the data a little bit. So yeah, I'm going to put start 8 minutes on the clock and give you 8 minutes to kind of go through this, and we'll be able to see we already have 5 participants, 1 thought already, and we're only 6, 7, 8 seconds in. So we're going to give you some time to do that, and I now wish I had some music to play for.
Matt, do you want to go to
the
Matt, do you want to go to the next screen so we can just see the connections happening?
You bet. Yeah, let's do that. Thanks. I always forget to do that.
Yeah, thanks.
So we see the on this side, we see just one thought so far. Participants are just coming in. We have that one thought. So great. Haven't actually, I haven't personally experienced any barriers or harassment. It's a good thought. People now just getting into it. This group, I kind of looked at how many participants we've got on this seminar session. Will 12 participants pretty good. I think I looked at about 25 people or 30 people. So be great to get as many people as we can on. I'm going to go ahead and join myself and start answering some questions. Oh, not going to do that good because you're going to be able to see my thoughts.
So as folks are rating thoughts and also looking at the screen Matt's sharing here, in real time, the top thought on the right is the one that's received the most stars. So this will keep shifting as folks keep rating thoughts. So this is kind of dynamically evolving, and you can always go back and add more thoughts and continue ranking. If you're on your phone, the purple bar at the top of the screen, there's a drop-down menu. You can go to share thoughts, rate thoughts, view results, and bump yourself around if you want to share more thoughts and then rank more.
And if you're on the computer, it's in the blue bar drop-down on that's the left upper side. Same sort of place. Looks like people are in the rating phase of this. We'll give it just a couple more minutes and see where we're at. I want to make sure we're favoring time for discussion as well. So, so I think, with 2 minutes 30 seconds left, keep putting thoughts in. But I'm going to put this in the background a bit, and we're going to kind of go through just the end of our presentation, and that's just to kind of tell you about our timeline and where we're going next. And then I want to definitely leave some time for discussion. So, we started this really in earnest after we got all of the players on board this summer. We've been working on the planning of it for a bit longer than that. But we foresee it going through December of 2023. We're going to be beginning next year for this coming fire season. Well, we've begun so far, as Rachel has said before, piloting some thought exchanges. We've been beginning to engage on one-on-one leader conversations and doing leader thought exchanges to try and get an understanding and buy-in from that level of the organization to make sure that we're asking the questions that make sense to them, because ultimately, going back to our espoused mission or espoused objective of helping the organization, helping this agency move through this change, leadership are really important for that. So how do we prepare them for the stuff for the change that we hope to see? How do we help them lead through that change? So in this early part, we're really focusing on ensuring that the leadership really understand what's coming, understand what this is about, and have a leg up on the change that we are hoping they're going to help us lead through. So number 4, their organization-wide thought exchange. That's this fire season 2022. We're going to start this, and a couple of great things about this is that we'll have this conversation. It'll be beginning with us putting out those initial thoughts. The initial question around what are your experiences. Again, we're going to be sending that information back out to all the participants, democratizing that information. And so it'll be this sort of ongoing conversation. And what's so important is that it really is in their own words as we move forward. Much like in the learning review FLA process, or the FLA, really the focus groups is more learning review process, where we really dig down and are asking those groups, trying to get together and dive in a little bit deeper into some of the interesting themes that we find, diving into those themes, and then coming up with and vetting action steps, and then finally implementation. So that's kind of where we're going with this. And let me go back so we can kind of see the thought exchange. And see where we're at. So, yeah, this is what's come to the surface. We've got the top ranked thought. So 11 people ranked this thought, an average of four stars. System isolates people who experience harassment. Reporting mechanisms often put attention on the victim, which can keep people from reporting. Supervisors might not take allegations seriously. Culture is really hard to see and therefore hard to change. And then stay on the surface, focusing on bad behaviors. And you can see 19 thoughts, which isn't a lot. With this tool, I believe works best with more folks, because it increases the anonymity. And we get a chance for those algorithms to kind of take hold and really get a really good distribution of people rating those things. Any thoughts from anyone, but the team or anyone with questions?
Just a note on safety. So it seemed like folks were respectful in this exchange, but participants do have the ability to red flag any thought that they feel is harmful, and that removes it immediately. And then an administrator, a thought exchange leader, so our team or all administrators in the back end, would get an email with that thought, and you could either keep it out completely or put it back in, depending. So that way folks can protect themselves and others from experiencing harm as a result of participating in the exchanges. And that's important to us. The algorithm does immediately pull out thoughts that have, you know, place names or names of people, but it could be a bit fuzzy on some things like, you know, this one time on fire, such and such, you know, someone did a thing, and we want to avoid those types of thoughts from getting shared. Matt, can we go to the Discover dashboard on this? Anyone else from our team want to weigh in on the tool itself and kind of anything we've covered so far?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I think one of the really valuable aspects of this tool, the thought exchange tool, as opposed to your typical survey, is that you can actually see other people's thoughts in real time and have the opportunity to rate them, of course. And so what we want to demonstrate with this tool today is just the fact that you see so many different things come up that you might not have thought of yourself, but when you see other people having written particular thoughts, you're able to notice that, oh yeah, that is a problem, and then rate that resonance with it. So I think as we get further into this process and we're working with the fire community directly, I think we're going to see some things surface from folks who feel pretty isolated due to harassment and discrimination, and this will allow them to share their insights about the experience and maybe see how other people respond to that, how they, you know, how those thoughts are agreed with, but also we can see the resistance to particular thoughts as well. So see where other people are sort of reacting in a way that doesn't agree, and the tool actually allows us to look at both the agreement and the disagreement to try to parse the different populations that are reacting and kind of get a sense of the sort of thematic clusters that we're seeing in their responses.
Matt, do you just want to bump it back to the demographics there, and we'll talk through that briefly, just the overview. So this gives us a breakdown. Each demographic question that's asked, as you can see here, it gives us a visual, but then we can also separate thoughts out to see, you know, how each demographic answered differently. And then as we can see here as well, so too few responses to maintain anonymity. So we are limited a bit to be able to export small data sets just around the demographic information. But this is really useful for us in contextualizing the types of answers that we get.
Rachel, if it's all right, I'm going to go over to themes so we can talk about the difference between the AI themes and the themes that the sort of mighty might that we bring to this with all of our social science expertise. So
it might actually be good, Matt, to pull up another exchange that we have themed to show folks once you show the AI ones here.
I can do, yeah. So you can see here from our thought exchange, the AI, and it didn't do a great job, but because of the small data set, but it pulls up, you know, 3 thoughts around people, 3 thoughts around harassment, 2 thoughts around organization and change. So the software itself does that. But if we look back here, we did another, this one. We did an exchange before where we had a bit more.
Matt, while you're pulling that up, I'm just going to answer Ben Iverson here in the chat. Thanks for your question. We do get a report. So anything that's pulled out of the thoughts, if it's flagged, we see it. So we can still review those thoughts. Our concern is just to protect participants from, if someone shares a harassing or discriminating thought that would be harmful for folks, we wanted to give, so participants have the power to flag that. But yes, we do get to see, as administrators, we get to see the entirety of the data set.
Yeah, so I think one of the great people, I mean, this tool is nice and flashy and it has bright colors, and it is a very good tool. I don't want to say anything like that, but what we bring to the table with this team and the power of this team is the ability to really dive in at a deeper level to the results. So in this case, from the 47 thoughts that were shared here, the AI generated themes like this, and then we were able to manually theme, and we came up with a set of different themes. And the way that looks is our team can go in and look at all the thoughts and begin to theme all of these thoughts. And what we do in this team is to use the verbiage from the participants. So use participants' own language to create themes. So all of these themes that we have are the words of the people who participated. So we create those themes, and really that's where I think the incredible value added is in what the sort of this team brings to this tool, and then in pursuit of our objective for this project. So I'm not paying attention to the chat. I've got too many other screens. Any other questions that we've been missing?
No other questions so far, but I want to put a question out to the group on this call, since we have some considerable expertise here. What do you see any unintended negative outcomes from using a tool like this, or the approach that we're taking to these issues? So anyone in the group, feel free to share any red flags you see or unintended negative outcomes that we might benefit from knowing about from your perspectives.
We did have one question that was in the form of a thought. How do these methods compare to Franklin Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, global leadership versus management type trainings? Might there be another approach that goes for some of these issues in a way that uses language less stressing? Also curious seems like 2 different methods. Mm. I'd love if whoever wrote that is comfortable elaborating, or we could try to address that right away. I am not terribly familiar with 7 Habits of. I don't think I could speak well to that right now.
Yeah, I guess what I'm seeing here, and I do want to, we don't need to call a person out to identify themselves.
Sure.
Here, but sometimes an approach I have taken to these issues is to frame them more around performance, like team performance and inclusion, rather than, harassment and discrimination. And this is a question that does come up a fair bit. Is it better to use less pointed language? Would we be alienating people by using language that's more direct, or if we ask about the thing we're actually inquiring about directly, is that going to give us more clear and usable data? So there's a bit of a line there around wanting to get information about harassing and discriminating experiences and actually understanding how accountability is working or not working, how everyday culture is maybe changing or not changing, or is supporting those behaviors. So yeah, there's definitely some thought that's gone into this on our team, and that's why we're presenting it in terms of, help us understand how you think the culture should change. And hopefully that invites that mindset of creating a higher performing culture. And then we are asking directly about, harassing and discriminating experiences. So there's definitely an argument to be made that approaching these from a performance perspective and a more of like a leadership skills perspective can also be valuable. But that approach sometimes misses the mark. And so because we know there are such deeply entrenched behaviors and concerns around harassment and discrimination and accountability, we are choosing to ask about it directly. It's in the title of our project, but the thought exchange questions themselves will not be using as direct language. They will be framed in a more open, language that is more inviting. So I hope that that's answered that question. Anyone else on the team want to weigh in on that?
I'll jump in real quick, and just to back you up, Rachel, on that. I think the idea that that we might approach this issue from a more performance-based set of language. It's a good thought. It's a good impulse. However, one of the really important reasons why we want to address this issue directly is because if one way to think about framing this just in terms of performance-based language is that it is one way of ignoring the actual problem. And so I can see, on one hand, approaching, kind of talking about performance and leadership development and all of that. That's one way to get people on board who don't think it's a problem or might be alienated by such direct language. But on the other hand, the problem exists, and it's existed for decades. And at some point, we really do have to deal with it directly. So one way that this project is really valuable is in inviting discourse around it without singling anybody out, and without really trying not to alienate anybody in this conversation, but making sure that we acknowledge it as a real problem up front.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. Anyone else on our team want to weigh in on that?
All right. Let's see. So we will go here, and yeah, I think I'd love to hear if anybody else has any comments or questions or anything that kind of sparked your interest as you saw this. Again, I am most excited because I really think we have a real chance to try something innovative, not only because of the use of this tool, but because of this unique group that we have together of and the perspective that we're taking. I think we're trying really hard to think strategically about how and when change can happen, and when it begins to happen, how we set people up for success, and how we utilize the research skills and the tools we have in order to kind of get the change moving, and the use of participants' own words, getting information that is relevant to the participants and then getting it back to them. Yeah, I'm really excited to see where this goes, and I really appreciate the time to bring this in front of all you folks, and thanks so much for taking part in the demonstration of the thought exchange.
Well, thanks, Matt and Rachel, for the presentation and for sharing your work with us. We do still have a few minutes left, so if somebody has a question and wants to jump in here, you can raise your hand or still enter it into the chat box while we're kind of wrapping up here. Yeah, thank you guys so much, and the rest of your team for your time and sharing your work. It was really cool to see the thought exchange. It was a more lively presentation with some interaction, so that was pretty fun. I'm going to share my screen here for just 1 second. See if I can get my presentation up here for the, just a reminder that we do have one more seminar left in the fall series next week, December 9th. The time is a little different. The seminar next week will be from 12 to 1:30 Mountain Time. This is the second part of our climate and fire panel discussion. So this will be a panel discussion focused on the intersection of climate science and wildland fire science. The presenters will be Cliff Mass from the University of Washington, Sean Parks from the Record Mountain Research Station, and Alexandra Seifert from the Oregon Conservation Institute. You can see the full seminar schedule here. We'll have the spring seminar series also listed on the website here as that fills up, and then you can always send me seminar ideas at this email address. So that's all I have. Thank you guys again for the presentation, and we'll see everybody back here next week at 12 o'clock.